Welcome to Escape Velocity Space News. I'm your host, Dr. Pamela Gay, and I am here to put science in your brain. This week, we're doing something we've never done before. We're dedicating the majority of the show to a single story, SpaceX's recurring failure to follow the rules, regulations, and norms of international spaceflight. We have the receipts, and we hope that you will hear us out before you hit that @ button. I and aerospace correspondent Erik Madaus are taking on this topic knowing it will bring us a certain amount of internet hate, because we recognize that accidents in spaceflight happen when engineers and technicians are pushed to do more than they are able, and when the people above them don't listen to their concerns. The Rogers Commission in 1986 found that NASA needed new safety features, not just on the shuttles, but also built into the organizational handling of future missions, because the circumstances of the Challenger accident, launching with a frozen O-ring, were only possible because of the culture to push forward that silenced the engineers who expressed concerns. Nearly 20 years later, the Columbia Accident Investigation Board would find many of the same cultural issues had arisen within NASA yet again, and they recommended the establishment of an independent technical engineering authority that is responsible for technical requirements and all waivers to them. Ultimately, it was recognized that the old military adage is true. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. And it was also recognized that the wolf can't guard the henhouse. Independent outside authority is needed to safeguard the processes that safeguard the people and spacecraft. Today, as we will detail in this episode, SpaceX is trying to bypass FAA and EPA regulations on Earth. We won't have time to get into it in this episode, but it has also been found that Starlink's latest generation of missions are also flouting FCC licensing in how they broadcast from space. This is happening while company representatives and their hordes of fans suggest SpaceX be made exempt from federal regulations. As journalists, it isn't our responsibility to tell you what should or shouldn't happen. But it is our obligation to point out history, provide context, and report facts. We ask you to listen, to think, and to decide for yourself if SpaceX or anyone else should be above the law, especially when they are launching vehicles capable of blasting a hole in the ionosphere. This is EVSN, a product of CosmoQuest, and supported by you through our Patreon. We live at a point of transition for spaceflight. For the past decade, we have been watching as NASA encourages commercial space corporations to take over their job of carrying satellites, space missions, and even humans to outer space. For the most part, the transition has been going smoothly. From what we've been able to determine, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and other U.S.-based companies have launched without incurring fines or triggering investigations other than mishap investigations, when things have blown up. Virgin has been launching largely out of Spaceport America, and Blue Origin is out of Launch Site 1 in West Texas. Other smaller companies have attempted launches from sites ranging from Alaska to Maine. Meanwhile, in Boca, Chica, Texas, SpaceX has managed to incur fines from the FAA and EPA and is currently being sued by, I kid you not, Cards Against Humanity. Let's look at what is going on by launch site. The Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, governs operation of all vehicles operating within the U.S. airspace. Relevant to this story, this includes putting forward rules on pre-flight requirements and operations of airport towers and aircraft control rooms. There are standard procedures for when companies want to make changes, and it doesn't matter if it's the local airport that serves crop dusters or the facilities in Florida serving the latest spacecraft. If you want to change how things are done, the FAA has to approve it. On May 2, 2023, SpaceX requested changes to both its pre-flight checklists and its control center for Falcon 9 launches in Florida. Specifically, they asked to skip their T-2 hours readiness poll and to move to their Hangar X control center. The FAA was unable to approve these changes in time for a June 18 launch. Without approvals, SpaceX used the requested control center and launch procedures. To be clear, they had an approved countdown procedure and an approved control center. They had also given the government less than 8 weeks to approve the changes. For comparison, passports take 6 to 8 weeks. Later on July 19, 2023, SpaceX requested a new launch license for their Falcon Heavy to use a new rocket propellant farm. 9 days later, they launched using the new tank farm, but without new approvals. Again, they had a permit for their old setup, and they didn't give the government ample time to approve the changes. As a result of these actions, the FAA has proposed 2 different civil penalties, totaling $633,000. Across these launches, SpaceX broke 5 different regulations.
We appreciate that these FAA violations haven't occurred during crewed missions, but it is important to remember that SpaceX launches people into space, including non-NASA civilians. Let's step back for a moment and look critically at the successful Polaris Dawn mission. Polaris Dawn is the first mission in the Polaris program, headed by Shift4 CEO Jared Isaacman. The first mission, on a Crew Dragon, would include the first private spacewalk. Missions 2 and 3 have not been fully defined, but the second will be on another Crew Dragon, and the third is planned to be on a Starship vehicle. Polaris Dawn had a 4-member crew: Isaacman, his best pal Scott Poteet, and 2 SpaceX employees, Sarah Gillis, who's responsible for Crew Dragon astronaut training, and Anna Menon, who's responsible for Crew Dragon program operations. The mission was originally scheduled for 2022, but was delayed to summer 2024, with launch ultimately occurring from Slick 40 on September 10th, marking it the first human spaceflight from that pad. This was also the first human flight since Apollo 7 in 1968 from Cape Canaveral. The crew flew to the highest altitude of any capsule remaining in Earth orbit, 1,408 kilometers. The EVA happened on day 3 of the 5-day mission and involved Isaacman and Gillis sticking their torsos outside of the hatch and moving around for about 7 minutes each, before returning to the capsule. Neither spacewalker free-floated, which was the original plan, but quietly dropped before the mission. They utilized a special structure called the Skywalker as EVA support. Since Crew Dragon does not have an airlock, all 4 crew members needed to be suited up. Part of the extensive modifications of Crew Dragon resilience involved clearing it for extended time with the interior open to vacuum, as it was not certified for this. The 4 astronauts wore new SpaceX developed EVA suits that are unlike any NASA has flown since Gemini. The suit's motion looked very limited, particularly on the left arm. During Isaacman's space stand, his suit temperature started at 90 degrees Fahrenheit, while shaded by the capsule during orbital night and only got warmer. SpaceX suits are air-cooled. Water cooling has been the standard for US and Russian EVA suits since the 1960s, following near-fatal heat exhaustion on early spacewalks. This EVA suit was clearly the minimum viable product to protect Jared as he stuck his head outside of the capsule for a few minutes to perform the stunt of the first commercial spacewalk, and it succeeded at that. It clearly can't be his rash work, like Isaacman's proposed Hubble repair, which NASA has refused. In addition to the EVA, the crew did other tech demos, including testing a Starlink laser receiver, which allowed for longer and higher quality live videos than seen during Inspiration 4, which used ground stations only. Polaris Dawn successfully splashed down near the Florida Keys, successfully completing a 5-day mission. No lies, Pamela hid from the internet during the EPA and had us confirmed when the capsule was repressurized successfully. Concerns over using air-cooled suits and depressurizing the entire capsule for our astronomy journalist forms of a horror movie. After the break, she'll be back to talk about SpaceX in Boca Chica. Stay tuned.
Florida isn't the only place where SpaceX is raising regulatory eyebrows. At the same time, in Texas, SpaceX has been failing to file needed paperwork completely. On September 10, 2024, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, issued a public notice of a proposed civil penalty of $148,378 for discharging industrial wastewater without a Texas Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. They were also cited for spilling liquid oxygen into the wetlands. The EPA administrates the Clean Water Act federally, but states, such as Texas, are allowed to run their own programs if their water quality standards are as high or higher than federal standards. The kind of permit SpaceX required is available through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCEQ. And SpaceX has previously applied for and successfully received this kind of a permit for their facility in McGregor, Texas, and at their Falcon launch pads in Florida and California through those states' environmental permitting agencies. A permit, once obtained, lays out what can be discharged as well as monitoring and reporting requirements. This kind of a permit is required for a subdivision that has street-level drains, as well as for major launch facilities that use a water deluge system. And under the Clean Water Act, all discharges of pollutants through a point source into the waters of the United States are prohibited without a permit. This means there are no circumstances under which it is legal for water from the deluge system to be released directly into the environment, as is currently occurring in Boca Chica. Directly discharging contact process industrial wastewater into wetlands is not allowed, permit or not. All industrial wastewater must be captured and treated. Heat, such as produced by rocket engines, is a pollutant under the Clean Water Act, Chapter 33, CFR Section 1362, Paragraph 6. In addition, when water was tested after use in the deluge system, it was found to contain elevated levels of mercury, cyanide, sulfate, zinc, manganese, hexavalent chromium, iron, and total dissolved solids.
Like SpaceX was fined by the EPA $140,000 for, they claimed, dumping potable water on the ground, drinking water. So, and we're like, this is at Starbase. And we're like, we're in a tropical thunderstorm region. That stuff comes from the sky all the time. And there was no actual harm done. You know, it was just water to cool the launch pad during liftoff, and there's zero harm done. Like, and they agree, yes, there's zero harm done. And we're like, okay, so there's no harm done, and but you want us to pay a $140,000 fine? It's like, yes, because you didn't have a permit. Okay, we didn't know there was a permit needed for zero harm fresh water being on the ground in a place where fresh water falls from the sky all the time.
Well, Elon Musk has claimed that SpaceX wasn't aware they needed a permit to release water someplace that it rains. Their prior application for a needed permit at their McGregor facility and others indicates the truth is more complex than his offhand comment implies. In fact, on July 1, 2024, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality acknowledged the receipt of an application that can be found through the Texas state websites, an application in which SpaceX provided fewer details than I'd expect from the builders of a local custard stand. For instance, when asked for the construction dates of all buildings and structures at their Boca Chica facility, they just put NA. Their brief history of the property and the name of the architect builder, if known, was just filled in as SpaceX launch facilities. Here I have to wonder if the need to apply for a permit 330 days prior to an intended discharge may have been an issue. I have to wonder, did someone decide it was better to ask forgiveness than permission of the EPA? Pushing is something SpaceX does a lot. In 2023, Elon Musk pushed for the launch of Starship 24 on Booster 7 for April 20th, 2023. In other words, he pushed for 24/7 to launch on the stoner holiday 4/20. This launch took place prior to the construction of anything that could dampen the force from the rocket's engines and prevent damage to the launch pad. The overpressure caused a failure of the pad's surface, sending large chunks of concrete into the Gulf of Mexico and the wildlife refuge next to the site. Smaller dust-sized particles rained down on the launch viewers at Port Isabel, 10 kilometers from the launch pad. It also burned 3.5 acres of state nature preserve next to the launch facility. That incident caused an accident investigation as well as an investigation into how the protected wetlands around the facility may have been affected. While there had been earlier discussion of using metal sheets to protect the pad, construction that wasn't complete in time for a 4/20 launch. After the pad's damage was assessed, the decision was made to build a water deluge system, such as is commonly used at the Florida launch pads. However, this system used an innovative shower head instead of a standard flame trench to direct the exhaust and suppress the sound. When Starship 2 took off 212 days later, on November 18th, the required 330 days for a permit in Texas had not transpired, and indeed, no permit had been applied for at that time. In the days since, the EPA has issued notice of their plans to find SpaceX. We have continued to see SpaceX release water at their Boca Chica facility, much to the memeing of social media users everywhere. No, the EPA is not trying to hold back SpaceX. They are just trying to hold all individuals and corporations to the same standards. What is not clear is why SpaceX didn't apply for a permit when they built their site, or at least on the day they decided on a water deluge system. The extra 120 days or so they might have had to wait in 2023 and early 2024 is time they could have used on other things, and time they are likely going to lose now and in the future. And SpaceX is doing themselves no favors. They aren't putting themselves in the good graces of locals who face road closures, periodic evictions from their homes, or find SpaceX has casually taken over use of their land. Yes, folks, SpaceX, a company owned by the wealthiest man in the world, is squatting on other people's property in West Texas. On September 19th, Cards Against Humanity filed a lawsuit in the District Court of Cameron County, Texas, against SpaceX for building and storing materials on their land in West Texas. Cards Against Humanity had purchased this land along the Rio Grande River in 2017 to protect it from being used for border wall construction under the Trump administration. This land was a pristine nature habitat, and Cards Against Humanity aimed to keep it that way thanks to funds raised through the sale of its 2017 holiday Cards Against Humanity Saves America booster packs. Rather than try and explain what happened next, I'm just going to read you what they posted online. Quote, Elon Musk's SpaceX was building some space thing nearby, and he figured he could just dump his shit all over our gorgeous plot of land without asking. After we caught him, SpaceX gave us a 12-hour ultimatum to accept a low-ball offer for less than half our land's value. We said, "Go f*** yourself, Elon Musk. We'll see you in court." The photos they've posted are rather damning, and I can only assume SpaceX didn't have building permits for the structures they built on Cards Against Humanity's land. This case is actually more than just one company telling another to get off their formerly pristine lawn. Cards Against Humanity argues in their filing that, quote, SpaceX, with CEO Elon Musk at the helm, has already damaged the reputation of Cards Against Humanity with its supporters, end quote. To read from their filing, quote, the 2017 holiday campaign that resulted in the purchase of the property was based upon Cards Against Humanity undertaking efforts to fight against injustice, lies, and racism. Thus, it is particularly offensive that these egregious acts against the property have been committed by the company run by Elon Musk. As is widely known, Musk has been accused of tolerating racism and sexism at Tesla and of amplifying the anti-Semitic Great Replacement theory. He has endorsed Donald Trump's 2024 campaign, promising to donate $45 million per month to a pro-Trump super PAC, and has expressed public support for building Trump's wall. These are just a few examples among many other acts overtly offensive to those who contributed money to Cards Against Humanity's 2017 campaign. Allowing Musk's campaign to abuse the property that Cards Against Humanity's supporters contributed to purchase for the sole purpose of stopping such behavior is totally contrary to both the reason for the contribution and the tenets on which Cards Against Humanity is based. Whether one agrees with Cards Against Humanity's political positions or not, the support generated by its business model is real and valuable and greatly damaged by these acts. End quote. Cards Against Humanity is suing for $15 million and plans to split the award, should they win, with the people who purchased the 2017 cards, with each PAC owner estimated to receive $100. If you are one of these purchasers, they ask that you visit ElonOwesYou100.com. For full disclosure, I have purchased many cards from Cards Against Humanity in the past. However, the 2017 holiday pack is not one I have bought or owned. We here at Escape Velocity Space News recognize that for NASA's Artemis program, as planned, to succeed, SpaceX and Starship need to succeed. Delays in the Starship program will cause cost overages with Artemis, and in the past, this kind of cost overrun has led to cuts to science programs. This is a future that would mean less science, the science we would rather focus on with our show. This is our bias. We want Artemis to succeed so science can succeed. Writing the show hasn't been easy, but as a journalist, it isn't my job to only cover what is easy. After the break, Erik will be back with Tales from the Launch Pad. Next up, I'm pleased to welcome back aerospace correspondent Erik Madaus for this week's Tales from the Launch Pad.
On September 12th, SpaceX launched 5 satellites for ASD Space Mobile on a Falcon 9 rocket from Space Launch Complex 40. Let's watch the launch.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal. Copy alarms.
Each of these satellites have a 65 square meter antenna for delivering internet signals directly to cell phones. This will make them incredibly bright, further worsening satellites' impact on astronomy. ASD Space Mobile plans to have a constellation of nearly 250 satellites. On September 17th, the Russian military launched a satellite designated Cosmos 2577 on an Angara 1.2 rocket. Let's watch the launch. The Angara 1.2 hasn't launched very often. This was only its fourth flight since 2014. Nothing was disclosed about the satellite's purpose, as is typical for Russian military satellites. Also, on September 17th, SpaceX launched 2 Galileo navigation satellites on a Falcon 9 rocket. Let's watch the launch.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition, engines full power, and liftoff of Galileo L13. Go SpaceX, go Falcon.
Vehicle station generation.
The European Union contracted with SpaceX to launch several Galileo satellites. This is the second and last launch. Unlike the first one, SpaceX was able to land the first stage of the vehicle following extra analysis of its first mission. On September 18th, China launched 2 more Beidou satellites on a Long March 3B rocket from the Xicheng spaceport. Let's watch the launch.
点火，起飞，距离动9时14分35秒8814秒，距离动9时。
Beidou is China's global navigation satellite system. It currently has 35 satellites operating. The satellites on this mission were the 59th and 60th launch since 2000. On September 19th, China launched 6 Jilin-1 commercial imaging satellites on a Long March 2D from the Haiyuan spaceport. Let's watch the launch.
Whoa.
Jilin-1 is a constellation of commercial imaging satellites that operate in the visible to near-infrared spectrum. 130 have been launched, and the company wants a total constellation of 300. On September 20th, China launched 4 satellites on a Kuaizhou 11 rocket. Let's watch the launch. The 4 satellites were Tianqi satellites for Chinese company X-Space Internet of Things. The company now has 32 satellites on orbit. Also on September 20th, Rocket Lab launched 5 satellites for French Internet of Things company Kinéis. Let's watch the launch.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff.
The mission was originally supposed to lift off on September 18th, but the countdown was aborted just before liftoff due to an unspecified ground system sensor fault. Kinéis now has 10 satellites in orbit. There were also 2 launches of Starlink satellites. Another mission worth talking about in detail is Soyuz MS-26. It launched on September 11th, carrying 2 Russian cosmonauts, Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Wagner, and NASA astronaut Don Pettit. MS-26 is Don's 3rd flight into space. He previously flew on STS-113 and became the first NASA astronaut to return on a different spacecraft type than the one he launched on. He went to orbit on STS-113 to perform a 4-month mission, with the plan to return on the next space shuttle. Following the Columbia disaster, shuttle flights were suspended and he returned on Soyuz TMA-1. This mission is Alexei Ovchinin's 3rd spaceflight, 4th if you count Soyuz MS-10, which aborted in flight due to a rocket failure, the first launch abort in 35 years. It did not cross the Kármán line, but did cross the McDowell line. MS-26 used the standard superfast rendezvous track and arrived at the ISS 3 hours after launch. The crew then settled in for the standard 6-month rotation as part of Expedition 71-72. Dawn is known for producing extensive science demonstrations for children, something he is expected to continue on this flight. He also invented a barn door star tracker for the ISS, used for taking stable, long-exposure astrophotography. We keep track of orbital launches by launch site, also called spaceport. According to Rocket Launch Live, so far this year, the United States has had 100 launches, China has had 42 launches, New Zealand has had 10 launches, Kazakhstan has had 6 launches, Russia has had 5 launches, Japan has had 4 launches, India and Iran each have had 3 launches, French Guiana has had 2 launches, North Korea has had 1 launch. This makes the total number of launches so far this year 176. There are 10 toilets in space, though there were briefly 11 with Polaris Dawn.
Thanks, Erik. Before we go, I have good news for what is one of the weirder astronaut stories of the year. Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore are the 2 astronauts who flew to the ISS aboard the Boeing Starliner crew flight test on what was supposed to be an 8-day mission. They are still on the ISS, although their capsule has successfully returned home, and the current plan is for them to stay put, doing science, engineering, and education work until February 2025, when they'll return on a Dragon crew capsule as part of Crew 9. This is the 3rd trip to the ISS for both Butch and Suni, and this is now Suni's 2nd time serving as commander of the ISS. Back in 2012, she was commander of Expedition 33, and now she will be commander, quite unexpectedly, of Expedition 72. In this role, she'll oversee operations of the International Space Station's multinational crew, including maintenance and scientific research. That is it for now. Good night, everyone, and remember to go look up. Oh, and please give this video a like and subscribe so the algorithm tells you and the world when new science is ready to be learned.